Hello, everybody. What's going on this morning? All right, we are live. We are live. How's everybody doing this morning? Let me check the chat to see where we're at. I didn't promote this well, so I don't expect a lot of people to be here. But first, I want to thank everybody who is here and who did show up. Thanks for coming by and spending the last day of the year 2020 with me. It's crazy because this has been one hell of a year, right? Like we can all agree, this year has been insane, right? Insane. This has probably been one of the worst years in the history of man, and it's fascinating to see just you know how different the world can turn in one year. Hey, good morning, Secret Squirrel, my buddy. What's going on? Morning. Hey, what's going on, little wizard, bro? Oop, yeah, Pet Rock. It's 2020 in Japan now. Ah, yes, yes. They've gotten out of the year of the devil, the demon. Happy New Year, everybody. I thought 2016 was bad. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because Trump being elected in 2016, all the people who thought the world was going to end didn't really think about 2020. So that now it looks tame. Yo, what's going on, Jeffrey? How you doing? How's everybody doing? Yes. This is my end of the year live stream. I'm happy to see everybody. I should have promoted this earlier, but I didn't. I just was like, I'll do something. I was actually going to do a planned a produced video, which I'm still probably going to do, but I wanted to just be able to just share my thoughts with you guys on the last of the year and just the experience of going through this year and what's been happening. It's been amazing. Um, let's see what somebody said in the chat. I'm going through random flip teams. Is that flip teams? And I am Team G Man now. Good luck, and hopefully I'm not sure what that means subjectively. You are metaphysically adept being. LOL. Philosophy is great. Yeah. Well, if you're quoting G Man, I don't know how great philosophy is. So there's so much to talk about for 2020, right? There's amazing stuff that happened that I think we just all just need to kind of just sit back and just see, like, you know in preparing for this video. um it was it was it was crazy because in going through, like, all of the clips and then just things that have happened that I just forgot about. It was just like, wow, this actually happened this year. And you'll see some of that. And just to see, like, some of the things that I think people just, like, even going through some of the stories, there's some things that the news media is just not talking about that just blows my mind. Like, how can this not be front page news? We'll go through some of those stories too that I want to bring up. But it's just like there's some stuff that is just front page news that is like, why aren't people talking about this? Why isn't this a concern for anybody? The consequences of things like defund the police. People aren't mentioning that. So, but we're going to talk about that today. You're going to see some of the consequences of the defund the police platform, and we're going to just see how 2020 has changed all of our lives. It's touched us all, and I think it's not for the best. It's sometimes for the worst. So first, let's go over people who we've lost in 2020. This is I know some people are going to be it's going to be interesting to say the least, but these are some of the people who we've lost in 2020. Let me go to the Chrome tab. People we've lost 2020. Let me do this. Before I do this, let me view, present this. All right. So this is some of the people who we've lost. $5 super chat from Secret Squirrel. Let me put this up on the screen first, and then I'll read your super chat. View, present. All right. So let me read Secret Squirrel's $5 super chat. So much has happened. It's hard to keep the news on anything. That is so true. It's crazy. Nate the lawyer. What about Cobb County, Georgia? The jail is horrible. I can just, I can just imagine. Thank you so much, Secret Squirrel, for the £5. I really appreciate it. And you're totally right. There's so much going on. I got to check out the story in the Cobb County jails too. So let's just start with now. You guys probably aren't baseball fans like I am, but I'm a huge Met fan for the New York Mets, and Tom Seaver is like Met royalty, and I can't believe he died in 2020. Right? It just is just one of those things where you're like, wow, Tom Seaver died in 2020. But yeah, this is most people are going to be shocked by this unless you're a Mets fan, but I'm a Mets fan, and Tom Seaver, I can't believe he's gone, but he is. Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant. Isn't this crazy, right? Kobe Bryant died in 2020. I think most people realize it because it happened early in the year, but yeah, Kobe and his daughter died this year, which was horrific. But it's sad to say, and it's interesting. He's a little old. He's a little younger than I am. So Kenny Rogers. Now I know I'm a black guy from Harlem, but if you don't know Kenny Rogers is the legend, right? The legend. I still, and it's funny because doing this list, I was like, Kenny Rogers is dead, but yeah, he's gone. Kenny Rogers. That was another shocker for me. Little Richard. Little Richard passed away. Are any of these people on this list shocking you? Little Richard. It's funny because even doing this list, when I saw Little Richard, I had to research it. I'm like, Little Richard did die, but Little Richard's gone. It's funny because I remember playing some of his songs when I was younger. It was always interesting. I remember watching his movie too, the Little Richard story. Now, most of you who are outside the city of New York won't know who this person is. This is David Dinkins. Now, David Dinkins was the first black mayor of New York City. And the weird part about it, I'm going to say this, and I hate the fact that I'm going to say this, but he's probably one of the worst mayors of the city too, right? He just happened to be. He was a bad mayor. He was so bad that in the Democratic city of New York, after he only had, I think he had one term that we voted in a Republican mayor, which was Rudy Giuliani, which was I think a good thing because Rudy definitely turned it up. And then we had 16 years, right? Because Rudy did 8 and Bloomberg did 12. So we had 20 years of Republican rule. But this was the first black mayor of New York City. Everybody who I know my uncle met him, and some people who I did know met, and they loved David Dinkins. But he was a good guy, but he just wasn't a great mayor, But David Dinkins, 2020, got him. John Lewis. Now, this is a civil rights icon. This is somebody when they open up the hoses and we're hitting people with hoses in Alabama, and the struggle for civil rights. This was somebody who was on the front lines. John Lewis is a hero. He's a hero of the civil rights movement. He was a living legend, and unfortunately, he passed away. He was a congressman out of Baltimore, out of Maryland. This is one of the people who, when you talk about the struggle for equality, for African Americans and for any minority in this country, the name John Lewis means something. And I don't think we would have gotten to the place we are now, and the conversations that we are now without someone like John Lewis, without his work. So John Lewis is he's an icon, and this is somebody who we lost in 2020. It's crazy. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, obviously. One more to say, she's a liberal line. Now, I'm going to say that I've read some of her opinions, and they have all been stellar. I loved her reasoning and thinking, but I do think that the reason why now we have a 6-3 conservative court is because Ruth Bader Ginsburg stayed on the court too long. She just stayed on the court too long. She knew she was up in age. She saw what happened with Scalia, and she should have left during Obama's term, but she wanted to hold out to the last possible second, and she got caught out there. Now, that's a liberal seat going off the court, and that court is going to be different for a generation, for good or bad. Not if you're conservative, you like it. If you're liberal, you don't. But the loss of the legal mind, I think, is something that I celebrate. because her life was amazing and what she did for equality for women's rights, the VMI cases. So this was she, this again, this was a hero of the movement. But at the end of the day, I think she stayed on too long. And if and I'm not sure, you probably don't think that she probably didn't think she was going to die in the last couple of months, right before the presidential election, but she did. And unfortunately, um, she, the country now, I think, is going to suffer by having an unbalanced court. I like a 5-4 court, and I like swing voters because it lets me think that it's not as politically biased, but it just is what it is. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg, legend of the court, and she'll definitely be missed. She'll definitely be missed, no doubt about it. Roy Horn. Now, does anybody know who this is? Because when I was looking up this list, I was like, does anybody know who Roy? Maybe if I say Siegfried and Roy, right? They had their Vegas show with the Lions. One of them got attacked by the Lions one time. Siegfried and Roy was like, the magic show. But Roy is dead. It's I saw the show before. I always thought they were amazing. They're world class acts. So Siegfried and Roy, for those of you who know Siegfried and Roy. Kelly Preston. This is John Travolta's wife. She died of, I think, breast cancer or ovarian cancer. I'm not sure, but she died this year. And I remember watching some of her stuff, from Jerry Maguire to some other movies she was in, and I could just imagine losing your wife in this year must have been horrible, and I can just feel for John Travolta, So Kelly Preston, she's someone we lost. Kirk Douglas from Spartacus, father of Michael Douglas. He passed away because he was up in his 90s. He's actually, what is he, over 1916? So he's over 104 years old. Am I doing that math right? 1916 to 2016 is 100 years. So yeah, 104 years. So he's lived his life, right? He's lived his life. You got to go sometimes, right? This guy looks like he was about to live forever, 100 years. But yeah, Kirk Douglas died. Regis Philbin was a shocker to me because for some reason, I don't know why, I thought Regis Philbin was going to live forever. I thought Regis Philbin was going to live forever. I don't know why. I thought Regis was like never going to die. Regis is just he was just one of those type of people. Always saw him with a smile on his face, and but again, he passed away. And it's I didn't know this too, but he actually grew up in the Bronx too. So interesting fact about Regis Philbin. Died 2020. This was a heartbreaker for me. I love the James Bond movies. I'm a James Bond fan, right? James Bond. James Bond passed away. Sean Connery. Now, don't get me wrong. I like Pierce Brosnan as James Bond. I like the new James Bond too. But Sean Connery set the standard. He was James Bond. He was the mole. All those actors that came after him were trying to really replicate what he had done as James Bond. I think he was, phenomenal actor, and he's definitely going to be missed. But Sean Connery, James Bond, is passed away. Crazy. This was one of a real shocker to me too. Chadwick Boseman. I think Chadwick Boseman's death was more shocking because I didn't know he was sick. Right? It's just like you see it one time and you're like, he's sick. So it's like, wow. And he was just 42. Was it 42? 140. Actually, he was pushing 43, right? 76, 2020. And so he's with 43, 44. Yeah, it just was crazy. Oh yeah, I remember Sean Connery was the Highlander too. So, oh my God. See Cat. Yeah, Regis Philbin seemed invincible. But I did. This is one I didn't see coming. And he don't forget, you had Black Panther 2. You had all these great things. Like, this guy was lined up to be one of the next Denzel Washington of the Black community, the next real big actor. He had done all these James Bond. 42, Jackie Robinson. This was the Black actor of our generation. This was the Denzel of our generation. And he was taken in his 40s. So it's insane. So that's Chadwick Boseman. So this is the end of the. Now, there were many, many, many more people who passed away in 2020, But those were just like the short list of people who I think most people just when you look back at, you're like, my God, these are some of the big names we lost. There were so many more. And this year, the COVID, obviously, there's a lot of people who have suffered losses like this. And let's just talk about COVID, right? The first case of COVID happened in January 2020. The January 21st was the first COVID case in the United States. And from that first case, we have now over 330,000 deaths. Now, let me put that in perspective for you. The death number, the 300,000 people who've died from COVID. That's if you take the population of Wyoming, which is about 600,000. That's like losing half the population of Wyoming in a year, right? So 1 out of every 2 people who live in Wyoming disappear. That's shocking, right? That's a shocking number, and I think it's hard that that we don't realize that we've been so desensitized to that number, right? Losing half the population of a state, it seems like nothing, right? It's crazy. CRISPR says Nate the lawyer, him choking up about cancer kids that doesn't make it to see Black Panther. It's even more powerful knowing that he knew he had cancer when he said it. Yeah. Cancer's crazy. Nate the lawyer, reach out if you need a biopharma consultant. I do. Doc Savage, I am definitely going to reach out to you. Doc Savage in the house? Yes. All right. But I'm definitely gonna hit you up, Doc. You know it. Doc Savage in the house. But yeah, so talking about COVID, but one of the more interesting things about COVID is aside from the massive amounts of death, right? Except for losing half the state of Wyoming in 1 year, there's just so much more. I think when you talk about COVID, you have to talk about the unemployment numbers, like the financial impact of COVID. I think a lot of us just don't understand. What does that mean? Let me show you something, and I think this will hammer home what I mean when I talk about COVID. And I think this is what the news media, for some reason, doesn't put forward. I just don't know why. But I think it's this thing about that the economic disaster that's happening with COVID just is not being talked about as much as the human impact of losing lives. But there is such a huge economic impact that I think my friends on the left, I think they realize it, but I don't think they're as concerned with it as my friends on the right are. Let me get this quick super chat after I pull these numbers up, historical data. So check this out and close this ad. So these are the jobless numbers for these. So what you're looking at is a chart of the jobless numbers. Let me get the super chat from Secret Squirrel. Thank you, Secret Squirrel. If you ever need an expert on nuts, I'll even reach out to you, Secret Squirrel. Let's look at now. This is an economic. Just so I'm fully. Let me pull up the other chart because this chart isn't the one I actually want. Stop screen sharing this and screen share the one I want, the jobless numbers. So this is a Chrome tab. Which one? This one. Nope. Sorry, I got to get the right chart I want to show you guys. So this is a historical chart. On the bottom, this is jobless numbers from 1980. And what you're looking at, so we put in perspective, these are jobless claims. So when people go file for unemployment, this is what you see. This is how this is when somebody goes to the unemployment office, says, I'm unemployed. These are these numbers show weekly how many people file for unemployment during this time. Let me get a couple of these chats in. The real horror of COVID is realizing my life is worth nothing to many people. As a high-risk person, I feel completely subhuman at this point. Oh, you shouldn't feel that way because there are a lot of us. The reason why I wear masks is for people like you. I don't want to spread it to someone else. And I think there are a lot of people who want better balance. But and there are some people who unfortunately, you're right. But no, you are I wear my mask to protect you, and I hope everybody else wears their mask to protect you. Because that's the best science can say. I'm not a scientist, but the scientists tell me when they tell me to do something, like when I go to the doctors and they tell me to do something, I try to do it. And I know most people are wearing masks to help you. So it's it. I do understand, but you know, don't let the haters pull you down. There's a lot of people who are wearing masks to try to protect you. So I do understand your feeling. That ain't the lawyer. That doesn't The right doesn't care about the economic impact because it only hurts the poor. If they did, they wouldn't be opposing things like that actually help. Well, but I think they have a. I think the right has a. They're looking at there's a healthy skepticism of government, right? The government says this, so they want to be skeptical of government, and they want to have it more clear. So I don't think they don't care about people. I don't think that. I think they're saying that the government should be more careful and shouldn't jump the gun and should have more research and development and think about other things like the economic impact of what they're doing than just shut everything down, because shutting everything down does have a cost to it, and not shutting everything down has a cost to it. So I think they're looking, the people on the right are just saying there may be better balance, there may be different options. Now I do agree that when you're in a clutch, you go with the science and then kind of see how things play out. But I think to say that people on the right just don't really care about people, I don't know about that, because I know a lot of people on the right who, when this virus first came out, they were scared to death. And they're still scared to death now, but they're less scared about the virus and what's going to happen when the virus goes away. They don't have their business, how they're going to feed their children. Think about this for my people on the left. When I was in Harlem the other day, there was a food. There were these lines. There's usually these lines for food, for people to get food. And I actually used to go and hand out food at my church. It was one of the things that I did when I was in law school, for instance. We used to go to my church and hand out food. And the line was long then, right? The line was like maybe halfway down the block. When I went, I drove by. I wasn't actually even hanging out food. I drove by the church, and the line for food was about 2, maybe 3 blocks long. 3 blocks, 3 blocks. And it was so bad that at the end of the line, they were giving out vouchers for people just to go buy food at the supermarket. Like, they didn't have enough food. That if you're a parent sitting at home with 2 or 3 kids and you don't have any unemployment benefits, you can't go to work, and they're telling you to stay home, and your kids need to eat, and you've never gone to a food pantry before in your life, but now you got to go beg for food, go ask for food, go stand on the line for food. That is real. That's real. Versus people dying, from COVID that you don't know. So that's what I think people just don't understand. There are real people suffering every day. Every day they don't know how they're going to eat. That's different than saying, where people who aren't suffering are saying, well, we're trying to save people from dying. So that's the balance. If you don't have any food in your mouth and you can't feed your kids today because you can't work today because they don't have unemployment insurance today, it's hard for me to tell that person they don't care about other people's lives, because I think they do, but I think they care about their kids too. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But that's the way I'm thinking about it. And when I go out there and I saw those food lines, that shocked me to the sense where we need to where this needs to be something better. And that's where this graphic comes in. Let me put this graphic up. That's where this graphic comes in. This graphic shows that. This graphic is that. Let me pull this up just so people can see. Weekly jobless claims, they go up and down, right? You get 500,000. They really hover around 500,000 jobless claims, and this is the weekly numbers, and you see it. But in 2020, April, in the week of April, we had more than we had in the past, since 1980. These are the jobless claims, 22 million in 1 month. That's real. That's real. Those are people who can't work, right? They've closed down their movie theaters. They've closed down the restaurants. They've closed down all of those things. Those are people who are not working. Those are people with families. Those are people with kids. That's the impact of COVID. This is the impact. 20 million people, 22 million people lost their jobs in 1 month. That's COVID. That's the impact. It's what, 10%? There's 300 million people in the United States. Almost 10% of the people, 30 million people have lost their jobs. I'm not even saying in the month of April. It's since COVID started. That's real. That's real. And the government stopped sending them checks. So just imagine if you're working in a movie theater, right? You're not getting a check. You're saying, well, the movie theater's not opening up, but you can't. It's tough. It's tough. But that's the real impact of COVID. Now, one thing, and this is what I'm talking about, the news media, because the news media, they're not covering the true economic impact of COVID to the reality of the situation. They are covering that because I think the deaths are sexy, right? You can throw the death counter up, 2,000 people lost today, which is serious. And now the healthcare system is being overrun. They are treating, in California, they're treating people on the street. They're treating people in the gift shops of hospital. The healthcare system in California is being overrun. There is a problem. But, if you had, what is it? In Houston, they'd had opened up the food bank and they had like 50,000 people come to get food for Christmas, come to get food for Thanksgiving. It's insane. It's insane. CRISPR, Nate the lawyer, the government stopped sending them checks. The right doesn't care about the epidemic. Yeah, it's true. Those Republicans in office were the ones who stopped sending the checks. If people vote them in, what can I do? Right? I agree. So the Democrats, just so we're clear, the Democrats said send out checks. The Republicans said we don't want to send them checks anymore, right? We don't want people to get checks. They kept saying that it would stop incentivizing people to go work. But if there's no job to go work to, then how is that an incentive not to go back to work? There's no job out there, right? They shut things down. So I thought the argument about, disincentivizing people to work, it was ridiculous, right? People need the money now. So yeah, I think the right politicians on the right, the Republican politicians, they got it wrong. They need to send those money out there. We need to stop the bleeding, help people now, and then think about the consequences in the future. You can't just say, go get a job. That just doesn't make any sense. When we know there are no jobs out there to go to, right? That just doesn't make any sense. One other thing I want to show you guys, which I think is going to be critical to our analysis, is that the jobless rates has a direct impact on crime, right? And people just don't, and I don't think people understand that there's a cause and effect model here, right? People are unemployed. They need to feed their families. They don't have, their kids can't eat. What do? Well, that leads to higher crime rates, especially in poor neighborhoods and poor communities, right? That's what that leads to. And then when you had someone like New York that defunded the police, remember they passed the defund the police thing and they defunded the police department. That should lead to higher crime. And nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking. This is probably the only place you're going to see the crime statistics in New York and hear someone talk about, how this economic impact of COVID has led to joblessness and has led to higher crime. This is a fact, and I'm going to show you it's a fact. Let's look at the crime statistics for New York, so you guys can see it. Here is the New York City crime statistics. And again, this is from the New York City Police Department. Where are you at? There we go. So this is the New York City Police Department crime statistics. I'm going to blow this up a little bit so we can all see it. So this is the last week. So they haven't updated this yet, but this is from the last week. So you can see that now, just so everybody can see. I want to go down to historical perspectives. So back in 1990, we had 2,000 murders in the city that one year, which is insane, right? It just shows you that's insane. That was unfortunately, that was the David Dinkins era of crime. It just was insane. But to read this chart, it's three ways. You got week to date, then you got the 28-day, which is the month, and then you have year to date. So the year to date, this is what we're going to talk about. If you look at murders in the city are up 40%. 40%, because obviously, you're going to lead to higher crime. Now, things like rape and robberies are down, and that's because people are obviously staying home, right? People are home, so you have less people out there being robbed and being, and dealing with, being able to be in those situations. To be so, those numbers are low. You got a 20% reduction in those things, and I think that's the whole stay at home piece of it, right? People are staying at home. Um, Felony assaults, people aren't going to clubs and doing it, so that's even down. But these property crimes are blowing up. It's crazy. Look at this burglary, 41.5%, right? This is grand theft. This is grand larceny auto. So people breaking into cars and stealing things in automobiles. That's almost 70%. So you can tell burglaries and people breaking into cars, those things are up because people are just getting desperate. When you see, if someone was to say, car break-ins are up 70%, that's, you would think it's like, what do we need to do? But it's because people aren't working and people are now making, and those people who can't work and can't get that paycheck are now committing these property crimes, and that's why you see this increase. My car has been broken into a couple of times, so this is real. This is real. Nate the lawyer, even when there were jobs, you needed at least to survive. Yes, of course. Yes. And I think that's the balance now is that people are now, this is the effect. This is the ancillary effects of these things. Here is shooting victims. Shooting victims are up 103%. So shootings in the city, look at this, shooting incidents are up almost 100%, 98% increase in shooting events. And shooting victims are up 100%. That's doubled in last year. Now understand this. This is a direct, I believe this is a direct cause of the huge unemployment, and the people can't pay their rent and the people can't go to work. This I think correlates to that. You do have more murders, you have more shootings, you have more property crimes, and hopefully, and this is, I think, the government's failing to help support these people in their most time of need. Because I think if you did have stimulus checks and you did have things where people can at least go and eat and then have to worry about their next meal, then these things wouldn't be as crazy. But unfortunately, the government didn't step in, and now I think cities like New York, and again, these crime rates are going up across the country. It's not only New York and big cities that are experiencing these crime rates. It's happening all over the country. I think New York is just a catalyst because New York had the double whammy of defunding the police. Then you had, the interesting piece of changing some laws, and now you see it in the numbers. 100% increase in shootings in New York is something that should, the NYPD should look at and say, oh my God, this is insane. This is a lot. So it's crazy. Yeah, shooting incidents where people, firing guns at each other. GLA is grand larceny auto. So in other words, people stealing things from cars. So that's what GLA is. Any more questions? So again, what's the right's fault for not supporting unemployment? Well, something. I think we all have to support. I think that's one of the issues here. He goes, do we have a week by week comparison before and after the policy change? They do, but I'd have to go back and look. But here's they have a week by week comparison here, but it's about this week versus that week a year ago. So, but this is it's go to just type in New York City crime statistics and you can see it. So now you guys have seen the crime statistics. They're off the charts. They're off the goddamn charts. And that leads me into our next piece about 2020 is Black Lives Matter. Now, many of you know I have been both critical and supportive of the Black Lives Matter movement, right? There are certain things that I've been supportive of, reforming police tactics and policies, trying to understand the criminalization of the Black man from historical perspective. From things like the Jim Crow errors and the Black codes, where Black men, particularly, were criminalized so they can be re-enslaved. It was, if a Black man was unemployed, they would arrest him and give him a criminal record and send him to a plantation for the rest of his life. That was one of the things that they did in the South. and those things have changed, obviously, but there are still some inequities within the system. And I think we would be remiss if I didn't mention George Floyd, right? George Floyd, um, he was murdered by the police, and that, I think, incident sparked this whole Black Lives Matter and the conversation about what is, the role of law enforcement in minority communities over policing and so forth. But I also think it had a negative effect on the conversation in terms of, let's say, like Jacob Blake or even Breonna Taylor to a certain extent, where now people were overgeneralizing. All police shootings were bad, no matter what the person did. If they pulled out a gun and pointed it at police or pulled out a knife, police should not, protect themselves. And I think that was an over exaggeration, or not looking at each incident separately and saying, well, the facts of this incident are different than the facts of this incident. Understanding that just because a Black person was involved in a police involved shooting doesn't mean the police were always wrong. And the opposite, just because, a police officer shot a Black person doesn't mean the police were always right. You had to look at the facts and go a little deeper just to see what actually happened. And I think Black Lives Matter had sparked the conversation and changed the narrative, right? Hey, there's a problem here. Even Trump, Donald Trump said, Black people have to be treated the same. And if you look at things like the Stanford study and things, the numbers, more Black people are incarcerated. But the right will also tell you that, hey, if you have, more Black people are impoverished. So, you would suspect impoverished communities would have higher crime rates. True. But then what are the reasons why these people are impoverished? You had things like redlining and government policies that kept African Americans in certain areas impoverished, based on government policies. So I think the conversation is more complex than just all police bad when they shoot Black people, and all Black people are bad. They should be killed. But that's ridiculous, right? But today, I think we're so polarized that we can't have that conversation. You don't know how many times where I'll do a video and I'll be called a coon because I say, well, here are the facts of the case. Like for the Breonna Taylor, I was called a coon because I laid out the facts of the Breonna Taylor case, and people who wanted it to be police bad, they killed her while she was sleeping in bed. That's not accurate. And by saying that's not accurate, then you're against Black people. But then on the opposite end, when I did a breakdown of George Floyd and said, hey, that was murder, then now I'm for the cause. So I think now, if we really want to have the conversation about law enforcement and their role in the Black community and the policing in these communities, we have to talk about not only how police are trained, we also have to talk about how the community feels about the police. And we also have to understand what are some of the things in the community that are fostering, this criminal activity. If there's, or is it the fact that police have these, preconceived notions about Black people? It's just so complex. And I think the overgeneralization is hurting the topic. But I do think Black Lives Matter is a good thing. I do think the pushback to Black Lives Matter is a good thing. And I hope that we can have an intelligent conversation about it, and not just, yell at each other and call, if you don't agree with me, you're racist. And if you do agree with me, you're a coon. That's unhelpful for anybody. Kiki says, I'm sorry, Nate the lawyer. Oh, what are you sorry about? It's okay. I'm not sure. Let me see. Nate the lawyer. Technically, it's the House and the Senate leaders, the ones who don't care. They'll line up pockets. That's true. That's true with Purdue and Kelly Loeffler. That was so crazy. It was insane. Thanks for the $5 from Adriana. I don't have much, but I want to thank you for your honesty. No matter what people will say, I hope you and your family have a wonderful New Year's Eve. Thank you, and thank you so much for the follow super chat, and thank you so much for the kind words. Yeah, I'm just it is what it is, and I think that's why I've gotten this following over this year. Is because no one is saying these things, right? No one is saying these things. It's either you're totally right and everything Trump says is right. You can't criticize him. You criticize him, you're a bad guy. And nothing that Biden does is wrong, because they're politicians. They're going to tell us what they want to hear. And I think these nuanced conversations need to happen, because if they don't happen, then what the hell are we doing, right? It's we're just yelling at each other, and I don't think that's helpful at all. Okay, I need to ask. Sorry, nosy, but why do you always have the band on your head, on your hand? What is that? Oh, no, no. This is just because my hair gets too crazy. I put the band, so I always keep a band on my hand. Sorry. Oh, sorry. It's one of those things. It's one of those things. But yeah, I always have a band, either on my hand or here. So ah, COVID bucks for Nate also. Thank you, Navy. Half of you haven't liked the stream. Fix it now. Fix it now. Thanks for the $5 super chat. Thank you for the support, brother. So we're going through this this list. I've talked about Black Lives Matter. I've talked about crimes in New York. So there are a couple other things that I wanted to go over. One is something that I promise really not to speak about on my this channel anymore, and it's really about the non-sex show. It's one of the things that happened in 2020 that I think I to be fair to my audience, for the hardcore audience, most of the people here who are going to watch this probably never even heard of the non-sex show, because I just stopped talking about it, because at the end of the day, it's like a nothing story. But it garnered some attention, and I'm actually very happy about the coverage, and I'm honestly surprised at the way it turned out. Obviously, I would have never thought that Kyle would fake all the bank documents and everything, submit them to the court. That was like insane. I just if you'd have bet me money that Kyle would have done something like that, I would have been shocked. But it's so weird to see how history has been repeated, especially when you have these things on tape. So one thing is that, like the plaintiff, his name is Steve McRae. He's someone who has had harassment restraining orders against women online, and he goes and he supports, I don't want to say it, but the guy who's who's about to go to trial for some very, very not nice things, so it was it was kind of crazy. It was not even kind of crazy, it was insane. Let's just call it was insane. So just for those who don't know, who's going to be this for the first time, the Non-Sex Show was a show on YouTube. They got about 20-something thousand subscribers, and it was a pretty good show. It was a friend show. It was about flat earthers, religious debates. It was that type of thing, and eventually, it got to a point where Kyle Curtis and Steve McRae, they were co-owners of the show, and they broke up. Kyle essentially kicked Steve off the show and stole all the money. All right, so he kept all the money. Steve is a bum. Kyle, is a former convicted felon, and Steve sued Kyle, but he sued Kyle because Steve had a benefactor. His name was Ruhef, and Ruhef spared the lawsuit. He paid for the attorney, and they went to trial. There was a default judgment put in, and Kyle came back and said he wasn't served properly, and turned in fake documents to the court to prove he wasn't served properly. At the last second, the plaintiff found out that the documents were false, and the judge ruled that, hey, you turned in false documents, you were actually served properly, and to none be the wiser. But it's funny because the plaintiff in the case, his name was Steve McRae, he was going around telling everybody who covered the case the same way, right? This is a bum fight. There's, the plaintiff is suing to get no money. This just doesn't make any sense. Why would somebody spend $50,000 to get money from a guy who didn't have the money? It just did not make any sense. So we all covered it. Now, some of the more interesting stuff, this was actually covered. This story, for those of you who want more of the story, this was covered in Forbes. So it's covered by a reporter his name was Peter Riley. Let me pull this up so you guys can see. So Forbes actually covered the story. Here we go. So this is it. Peter Riley in Forbes magazine covered the story. And Object Levitt to be, and he says the same thing that we've all been saying for years. This is stupid. It doesn't make sense. Why not just give Steve the money? And it's a fascinating story. So he goes through it, and one of the things that he does, he actually gives my coverage a shout out because he was doing research on it, and I invited him on. He watched one of the hearings with us. But in my opinion, Nate's coverage is most well grounded. He refers to the court filings, the videos, and we go for it. So, this was a huge shout out for me, for my channel. I'm in Forbes. My coverage of this lawsuit, he found to be impartial and fair. But Steve, he said no, 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 and said this guy, everybody who covered the story, Steve said it was dishonest. It's kind of, I don't want to call it the Trump defense, but any coverage that he didn't like, he said was bad. Any coverage that he liked, he said was good. But it was interesting. But it even gets to the point where most of Steve's fans, which are few and far between, but most of his fans started going out saying things like, I was wrong about everything in a lawsuit after Forbes gave me that shout out. But think about this. They've said that, right? I've gotten everything about the lawsuit wrong. So I want to play a clip for you about some of the things I said. Now you're going to see me a little younger. You're going to see my dreads a little shorter and all this other stuff. But I'm going to play you some of the things that I said about the lawsuit. And these are they said I got everything about the lawsuit wrong. I didn't get anything right. So I'm actually going to play you what I said about the lawsuit and tell me if I got these things wrong. So this is gonna we're gonna go through this right now. Check this out. These are some things that I said, and I told you, this is my mini dreads.
It is so bad. It is so bad that I don't know how people at this point could rationally not sympathize with Steve. Now, no matter how much I think he's a liar, that doesn't mean that this person wasn't wronged. He was wronged horribly. And I think, he's gotten, communities get behind him. He's gotten a whole huge load of subscribers and more Patreons to help support him because I think everybody at that point saw from his perspective, and more power to him. That and said that they were not 50-50 partners. Now, my own personal opinion is that they were 50-50 partners, and Kyle kicking Steve off the show was ridiculous, but those were the claims. So my last question on this is that, do I think it's 50-50? I do think they had a 50-50 partnership. I do think they have a 50-50 agreement. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people aren't going to be happy to hear me say that, but I really do. I think they did. I think they had a 50-50 agreement. I think they had a partnership, looking from the beginning all the way through, and I've done a lot of research on this, and just, if they didn't, they fooled everybody. But it seemed like they would. And if I was the judge, based on the evidence that I've seen, I would rule they had a 50-50 agreement that guy needs to be paid. That just makes sense.
So hasn't Kyle shown the books to Steve? Yes, I think I'm 100% true. I think Kyle should still show the books to Steve. It should be very clear that, hey, here's the money I've made, here's the money. I don't know why. I wish I knew why. I would say he should report that to Steve ASAP. Again, I think Kyle is despicable in this. I think he should be paying Steve. I think Steve did work, and I think Steve did good work. He did very good work on the show. So he should pay, yes, 110%. Steve should be paid by Kyle. No doubt about it. I'm not cool with Steve at all. But what's right is right. You guys started the show together. The guy hasn't got any money, even though I understand you're trying to. There's this fraud aspect that you're trying to put out there, but you should just give the guys money. He worked. He deserves to get paid, and the way the breakup happened, I think also was poor. Maybe Kyle was just afraid of confrontation or whatever, but that shouldn't happen to anybody. And I think even if this quote unquote fraud issue is something real, it's not really something that I think you should stop. Like even if, and it's a big if, even if Steve committed some type of fraud, I still think that doesn't change my opinion on the show or what Kyle did to Steve. I think Steve still deserves his money, and the fraud issue, honestly, is maybe just like a red herring, but it's a serious issue that I think has to be discussed.
So that was, now remember, I'm talking about the plaintiff. The plaintiff should get paid. The plaintiff, the guy should be paid. He worked. I said all this stuff, right? That he should win, all this stuff. And they said I got everything wrong about the lawsuit. So I don't know. I'm saying the guy should win, right? I'm essentially saying he should win, right? So it shows you that it wasn't about what I was saying or about the coverage. It was about the person just didn't just, again, it's a narrative that wants to be put out there. And I think Forbes and everybody else who saw the coverage of that show really, really appreciated the fact that I think I went bent over backwards to be fair to both sides. And I've said it publicly back then. That's a year ago. And those are old videos. You can see how I've changed. And I'll go on record again. Steve was wronged. Steve should have been paid. Steve should have won the lawsuit. I think if for the motion to dismiss that Kyle put in for the service, when I first saw it, I thought Kyle had a great shot because I thought all that stuff was real. Steve thought it was real, and Steve had even said that Kyle had moved, but I didn't know that Steve was lying too. But at the end of the day, I think the right person did win. I always thought Steve should win, and he was going to win, but it was just how do we get there? So if you think that I was unfair, or if Steve and them keep telling, for those of you going to watch this, when Steve tells you Nate got everything wrong, remember what you just heard. Remember, everything was wrong. Me saying that he should win and he should get paid, that all was wrong too. It doesn't make any sense. So that was something I think was important that came out of my coverage. And the one great thing about that case, I think, was that the coverage of that case, we were able to cover that case from before papers were filed, through the filings, through the motions, through the hearings. So it was a full coverage of this case, the financials, for instance. And so I think it really gave people an insight to just civil litigation and how it works and what are the hoops that people have to jump through. And it was more of an educational piece on civil litigation from start to finish. And I think at the end of the day, the process worked. The person who forged documents were caught, right? The person who stole the money, they are now being forced to pay. Like the system worked in this situation. It doesn't always work, but I think in this situation it does. And just want to say a couple of things about Kyle. I think Kyle's a good person. I think Kyle's done some horrible things, and I think there may be, it may be drugs involved. There's something wrong there. I don't think reasonable people do, what he's accused of doing. They don't do that. And I think, and I wish him well, and I wish Steve well too, but I wish him well. And I wish he can, how do I say this? I wish he gets, help. And I have no ill will toward Kyle. I honestly, if he was to come back and wants to tell his story and wants to come on the show, I don't even mind doing that. But I really do think that he needs to have really internal look, because, what he did was so bad and so just irresponsible that, was it really worth it? Was it really worth it? And we all believed him. Steve believed him. I believed him. People. It's funny because I gave money to Kyle, right, to his fundraiser. But most people don't realize I actually gave more money to Steve than I did to Kyle, right? I gave Steve money 2 or 3 times during this thing. I gave Steve like $100 over this time frame. And I gave Kyle $20. So I actually supported Steve more than Kyle in this whole thing. But it's a fascinating look at how people break up and what happens in the civil arena. And I honestly, I feel Kyle needs some help, and I hope he gets the help he deserves, and I hope, and I do hope maybe he comes back and he learns from this and he apologizes to the people he hurt, because we all have done things to hurt people, either intentionally or unintentionally. And I think it's not about, it's not about failing or not about being perfect. It's about understanding that we're all flawed, and now you're not going to make that same mistake. Will I ever trust Kyle again? No. But I'm one of forgiveness, and I think Steve should forgive. I think everybody should forgive, but I think you have to pay for what you've done. So that's my last piece on the non-sec, and probably won't speak of it again after this. I'm on this channel. Nate the lawyer. Steve didn't win at all. Kyle defaulted. Nothing Steve said was adjudicated on the merits. That's true, but do not default. Yeah, he did, but he chose the default. Kyle got the papers. We all know Kyle got the papers, and Kyle said he chose the default. So to me, that's just as good as him saying that, because he, And let's just be honest. I don't really think he had a case to that point where he was where he would win. I never thought Kyle would win the lawsuit. I thought he may win that motion, but I never thought he'd win the lawsuit. So we'll see. But good luck to them. And I hope they I hope Steve gets the channel back, and I hope it's successful, for whatever he's going to do. But that's in my rearview mirror, right? That I'm moving forward. Yeah, and Kyle was judgment proof. Yeah, that's a crispy. You're hitting on all fours today, baby. All right, so some other things that I wanted to just mention that happened in 2020 before I get out of here. Trump was impeached. Do you guys remember? Trump was impeached. We had a president impeached in 2020. I think it's been like third time in the U.S. history that we had a sitting president impeached, and it seems like that was so long ago. Most people don't even mention it during 2020. Right? When we talk about 2020, we don't even mention the fact that the president of the United States was impeached this year, and he was acquitted for the impeachment. But it's one of those things that you would say, in the history of this country, something that was so crazy. It's only happened a couple of times. The president of the United States was impeached, and he was acquitted. But it's just something fascinating to see that the president was impeached, and it is a footnote to what's going on in 2020. Remember, a footnote to what's happening in 2020. It's just to show you how desensitized we are to the craziness that's been going on. But yeah, it's crazy. And then let's not forget about the election, the most contentious election ever. And one thing I like seeing is that whenever I see Fox News, there was 73 million people voted for the president, and this is but they never realized 81 million people voted against him. Right? 73 million people voted for this guy, but 81 million people voted against him. So it's so I'm someone who understands we don't have a we have a representative democracy, but we're a republic, right? And the popular vote means nothing at the end of the day, right? So even if you have 100 million people vote for you, you can still lose the election based on the way we vote. But think about this. It's now, I think, gotten to the point where people on the right aren't, they aren't talking about democratic principles, right? Because democracy would be if you have 8 million more votes, that person should be president. The policy, I think they're trying to push is that, it doesn't matter how many more votes he got. The fact that the loser got, enough electoral votes, that should make that legitimate. And I think our system is broken because I do think the amount of votes matter. I do believe that you can't, if a system that someone can have 8 million more votes than the other guy and barely win the election, I think that's a travesty in of itself, but I think our system was set up for that. The system that we have was set up for this, where a candidate can lose by millions of votes and still have a theoretical chance to win. That I think is insane, but we have the best system on the planet. And this is the way the founding fathers wanted to make it. They wanted to make it so the popular vote and normal people didn't choose the election. But hopefully that will change one day. But right now, it's crazy. And everything with the election thing, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just assuming that there were issues with this election. I think that's clear. But I think there were issues with every election. There were more voters than votes in Detroit, in 2016. There was issues in voting, all the way back. You can go back in time to Grant when they threw out votes because there were issues with voting. So there's always going to be issues, but we don't live in a perfect system, and there's always going and since there are issues, the bar is if those issues would overchange the election, would change the result, and if there's evidence that there are issues like this, and right now there just hasn't been any. There may be some out there. I don't want to close the door on it, but if there was, I just haven't seen it, and maybe there will be. But we'll see. We'll all see together. I'm not in the best position to evaluate the evidence that people put on Twitter, right? I think it's the courts and the lawyers and those people and the investigators in these states who are best able to evaluate it. So if they do evaluate it and they say it's nothing, I don't have the tools to evaluate it. It's hard. It's just extremely hard for me to believe that the Republican governor of Georgia who's a Trump supporter, in a in a ruby red state would do something to throw his electoral votes toward a Democratic candidate. It's hard for me to believe, and I think most people who believe that, I think, just aren't being reasonable at this point. I don't think they're being reasonable. And, it just is what it is. But maybe I'm missing something. Maybe the Republican governor is so corrupt that he's throwing the president of the United States under the bus. It's just hard for me to believe. The Trump supporting, Trump voting governor of the state. It's just hard for me to believe. Yeah, it was ruby red. It was ruby red. Last time he voted for a Democrat was like almost 30 years ago. So it was ruby red. Now it's blue. And we'll see if it turns full blue. I'm coming on. But yeah, it's just hard for me. A Trump supporting governor vote against the Democrat. It's just hard for me to it's hard for me to sell. And my last the last thing I want to talk about is, where do we go from here? This year has been an incredible year for our country, and for our world. We have to move forward, now understanding that no matter what happens, we're in it together. There is no them. It's only us. And I think until we start realizing it's not us versus them, but it's us versus us, and we need to stop talking to each other or talking at each other, and start listening to each other and understanding the nuance in those positions, and try to place ourselves in the other, and show empathy to the other side. What are you actually trying to say? What am I missing with your particular point of view? It's weird, because when you look at the conversations now, it's like people don't want to hear the other side. I'm not going to apologize for being Black. Nobody's asking you to apologize for being Black. We're asking you, if you want to abolish the police, what are you going to put? If somebody, what are you going to do in response to that? If somebody needs help, who do you send if there's no police department? That's something. It's understanding that some ideas are just bad ideas, and no matter where they come from. And I think we all have to go into this next year understanding that there's just us. And if we can't talk to each other and get through this stuff, then we'll always be in this static civil war through politics. And it's got to be more. It's got to be, it's got to be better. It's got to be better than this. It just has to be better than this. And I know most of you want it to be better than this, but I think it starts with conversations like this, right? It starts with conversations like this. Every cop is not racist. Every black man who got shot by police is not a criminal. It's just understanding that each situation itself should be judged, and overwhelming generalities is just not what we want. We want the nuance. We want to understand. That's what we want. And for all of you who I'm not going to see before tonight at 12, Happy New Year's. I also want to be thankful for all the new people I've met. Viva, Uncivil Law, Emily, Nick Recchietta, Robert Barnes. These are all people who new I've met. Secret Squirrel, all the Patreons, all the channel members. If you grab a channel membership if you haven't, but all the channel members, you guys have supported me. So this channel has become something. It's become something, an avenue which I can express my thoughts and feelings and share my life with you and share my thought process with you and where I want to go. And I say this, I'm going to say things that are going to upset you, right? I'm going to say things that are going to push you. But I never want you guys to come to this channel and think that I am just going to tell you what you want to hear. I want to make you think, right? That's the key point to this. That's why I think people love my police breakdowns, because I put you in the spot and I say, you tell me, what do you think? Do you think this is reasonable? Do you think it's not reasonable? Do you think this officer is justified? Do you think they're not justified? And I think you are a reasonable person. I think you're a reasonable person. When you see the facts, we're all going to come to the same conclusion. But somebody has to give you the facts, not spin. And that's what I'm hoping to do. So with that said, Happy New Year to all of those who I don't see. Happy New Year to those of you on the other side of the globe who New Year's have already come. And I am going to see you later. There's one last thing I wanted to mention. Let me make sure, see if I got it up here. Oh, yes, before I go. Scientific discoveries of 2020. How did I forget about this? There's three that I want to just want to go really quickly. So there are three scientific discoveries that I wanted to share with you guys, which I thought were fascinating. These are actually the top three here. So first is the research into COVID-19. I think this has been groundbreaking and amazing. Don't forget, this virus was identified maybe about a little over a year ago, and we already have a vaccine, right? We already have like 4 vaccines. So, medical research is just this alone, I think, is such a triumph in both science and medicine that it can't be understated. This is where we are at as a species. We are engineering, our survival. This virus is, if this virus was unleashed, we would, millions of people would be dead. This is amazing what science has brought us. And I think it's just underappreciated. The COVID-19 research, the vaccine, it's amazing. A second thing that I think is unbelievable is that artificial intelligence, they've just done artificial intelligence that can spot breast cancer and prostate cancer near perfectly. This research is groundbreaking. This is going to save people's lives. That's what this is going to do, save people's lives. This is something that's not really been talked about, but amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. And last but not least, I want to go over real quick is CRISPR-Cas9. For those of you who know who CRISPR-Cas9 is, this is new gene editing technology, and I think this is going to change our world in the next 5 years. I'm expecting this technology to change our world dramatically. We're talking about ending things like genetic diseases. We're talking about things like extending people's lifespans, where people can live 200-300 years. Like the CRISPR-Cas9 is so, I think, groundbreaking that soon we were going to have the benefits of this. Now, if you haven't seen it, you should go to YouTube and type in CRISPR-Cas9. There are many videos on it, but this gene editing technology is the future, and it's not only going to save lives, it's going to change the world that we live in. I want to get one last thing out. I keep saying one last thing, but Kiki Dawn has asked me something. She says, Nate the lawyer, can you touch on KJ? Use of Tucker Carlson just for a few minutes. Yeah, sure. All right. So for those of you who don't know, there's a lawsuit that's happening now in the YouTube community between the channel that has 9 million subs, right? 9 million subs. And there's a channel that has like 100,000 subs. So the 9 million sub channel, Tati Westbrook, she's suing this smaller channel. Now, the smaller channel, I believe, is a commentary channel, right? This person does things like on the Duggars and all this stuff. And I'm friends with, actually. Her name is Katie Jo Paulson. I was friends with her. I still consider be friendly with her. And my position is that I think that she can win her lawsuit. She's been sued for defamation. And if you look at and if you guys want some context, look at the video I just did about Tucker Carlson, Tucker Carlson's video, where he said some defamatory things about a Playboy playmate. He more or less said she was extorting someone. Actually, he said she's extorting someone. It's obvious, things of that nature. And the court says, well, since that's a commentary channel, since it's an opinion show commentary channel, no reasonable person would think that person, what this person is saying is fact. And I think you can apply those same principles to Katie Joy, where Katie Joy Paulson is commentary. Now, I know sometimes she says she's a journalist, she's not, she's this, she's that, but I think I think the defense of that she's a commentary channel, I think it's a powerful thing, and I think it would make it very hard for, if you look at both the Rachel Maddow's case, when she said very clearly that this OAN was being paid by the Russians, false, and the court said, well, she's a commentary channel, you can't hold her accountable, and Tucker Carlson saying this woman committed extortion, and that was false. I'm thinking that those cases and that precedent, it strongly favors a dismissal in the Katie Joy case. And I also think that them being public figures, Toddy Westbrook, and even our husband. I think our husband's a public figure. He's on videos that got millions of views. You know, I would be counting that up. He's on news coverage. He's in, you know, he's doing a lot in the public, where I think you can make the argument that he's not only a public figure, or he's a limited public figure for this sense. And I think if you make those two arguments, I think Katie has an extremely strong case to get this dismissed. I think that there are holes. Do I think that Toddy has some chances? Yes, and I think it's going to come down to a judge determining whether, you know, these people are what do they call them again, or public figures or not. But I really think if I'm a betting man, I would bet money on that KJ would have the better case in getting this dismissed. But that's my opinion on the matter. You really need the lawyers. You really need her lawyer to make these arguments, right? And her lawyer hasn't been making these arguments. Her lawyer's been making pretty poor arguments. So until the lawyer makes those arguments, everything I'm saying is really meaningless in that case, because her lawyer has not made those arguments. If I was her lawyer, I would be grabbing the Tucker Carlson case. I'd be grabbing the Rachel Maddow's case. I'd be grabbing, there's a couple of cases in California I'd be grabbing and saying, hey, this is it. She's a commentary channel, just like all these channels. And they said worse things about their people than her, right? They said worse things. And they said it with absolutely no evidence. She has these things that she can rely on, you know, because there's a negligence standard and an actual malice standard. So that's my full thoughts on the. Now I know Emily Baker disagrees with that. I know Untable Law disagrees with some aspects of it. But again, that's my opinion on that particular subject. So listen, again, for all of you people out there, first, thank you for the super chats. They really do help you guys. Thank you for those who are channel members, and thank you for everyone who watches this, and thank you for everybody who not only learns things from these streams, but also thank you for sharing your thoughts and helping me learn things too, because I learn just as much from you guys as you guys learn from me. This is a two-way street, and I really appreciate it. And I appreciate when you guys also challenge me on my ideas, because unless I'm challenged, I don't want to be somebody who believes they're right. Just because I said it. I'd rather be able to prove that I'm right. And if I can't do it, then I don't want to believe wrong things. And if I am believing something that's wrong, I definitely appreciate you guys calling it out. Last super chat, Nate. Keep the wonderful work up. Glad to see your channel growing. You should be recognized even more in 9-2. 9-2. Okay. And listen, thank you, gentlemen, Pioneer, and thank you all for watching. And I will see you next time. My name is Nate the Lawyer. This is my last stream in 2020. Thank God this year's over, and I will see you guys next time.